Hi, I'm Paul Gray. Come explore Alaska with us and discover the diversity of its culture. In the land of the people of the far north, we'll travel 13,000 miles of roads to more than 500,000 square miles of Alaska's wilderness. From tundra to mountains, oceans, villages, and towns, from art to wildlife, glaciers to thousands of miles of rivers and lakes. Alaska is a place that breeds discovery.
Alaska is a land of choices. Alaska is also a land of dynamic moods, and one thing you can count on is winter. When the days of light grow short and the weather paints a new face on the land, a miracle occurs. Underbrush is covered with snow. Mossy bogs called muskeg become solid footing. Lakes buried deep in the wilderness become fields of ice. Alaska, completely different from summer, emerges like a butterfly taking its maiden flight from its cocoon. Which leaves Alaskans with choices. You can sit by the fireplace, catch a flight south, or open the door to the wonder of another Alaska and step into a landscape of majestic beauty. For hardy Alaskans, this is not the time for hibernation like their neighbors the bears. This is the time to run the dogs, sled dogs, because now all the land that was next to impossible to negotiate in the summer has been transformed into a scenic highway, whose white lines are as wide as your imagination and as real as the joy in a sled dog's heart. Welcome to Alaska's Kenai Peninsula. It is time for the annual Tustumena 200 sled dog race, called the T200 by the mushing community. The T200 is one of the qualifiers for the famous Iditarod and the Yukon Quests. What started as a small local race now attracts mushers from all over the world. Before the race takes to the trail, the mushers are required to meet with the race marshal and to be informed of the rules and the course. The mental part of this race starts here in this room, while the dogs rest outside and the mushers take some seat time before the physical effort begins. The day before the race is the pre-race banquet. After the dinner, the drawing for starting positions takes place. This is a chance for the public to meet the racers and the sponsors.
Didi, General, nice to meet you.
At the ceremonial start in Kenai, at the Dodge dealer, Kenai Chrysler, which is the main sponsor of the T200, kids with disabilities are graciously chosen to be celebrity riders. This is an opportunity to spiritually travel through familiar landscape. The kids feel the joy of the dogs running, the wind in their face, or, oh, let's be honest, who knows what any kid is thinking? They're just having fun. The ceremonial start is over. It's time to head down to the official start at the Tustumena Lodge. The Tustumena Lodge, located at mile 111 of the Sterling Highway, just north of Coho Loop Road, is the start and the finish of the race. The competitors, dog and man as a team, take care of business surrounded by a crowd of spectators, officials, and volunteers. Meetings in warm rooms and sit-down dinners at a table are over. The mental part of the race has been cooking in the musher's head for months and coming to a boil the last few days. Like NFL football players before a league game, the dogs are pumped, can't wait to get on the trail. This is their life, their ambition, their glory.
Pull me through, that's what I Hi, I'm John Little, and I started racing in 1993. The natural thing to do. I had a dog team and I wanted to, have the adventure, and a race is set up so that you can have a lot of fun in the backcountry. It's sort of like camping in the winter. You're out there with a bunch of dogs, you've got your sled and your supplies, and it's really a great experience to see the country and to have fun with the dogs. The starting line is less than 10 miles from my house. I love the country, I train in the country, and it's always fun to race in your own neighborhood. Tustamina 200 was the first distance race I ever ran, a favorite of mine ever since. One of the most interesting races in the state because it's very hilly. The race is 100 miles out and 100 miles back. You start at the Tustamina Lodge and you go 100 miles through the back country until you get to the Clamshell Lodge, take a 6-hour break, and then you go back the way you came in.
The Caribou Hill Snowmobile Trail Map is invaluable to the mushers. Paul Gebhardt, veteran musher, points to the T200 route.
I always tell the mushers when they come down here that you're going to run about 12 miles of flat trail and the rest of it's either uphill or down on that 200 miles.
This Tyvek map encompasses 1,500 square miles. It lays out all the trails in the Caribou Hills.
Very hilly the first 50 miles, a lot of uphill. The trails are good. They're groomed by the Caribou Hills cabin hoppers, and parts of the trail are, I think about 10 feet wide, and you could drive a Subaru down them if you wanted to. You're going up about 1,200 feet, just above tree line at the highest point. And from there, you go basically down to the Clamshell Lodge and through what little flat country there is in the race. Take a 6-hour break, and then you go back the way you came in.
Lost Creek Lodge is one of 4 race checkpoints. Manned by members of the Ham Amateur Radio Club, they check the mushers for time in, time out, how many dogs they drop, and how many left running. The information is sent to headquarters by radio and logged into a computer.
Oh, Lost Creek Lodge is great. The owner is a musher, Kim Cooper. She has free food for the mushers. Nice to come in and have something like that. There's a lot of attention to, dog care and making sure everybody rests enough.
This is a rest stop, a mandatory rest stop. They've got to spend 4 hours here, and they can divide it up any way they want in increments of an hour. Whether they can come in and spend an hour and then come back and spend 3 hours, or they can come and spend, as some did, spent 4 hours. Their teams retired last night, and so they stayed for 4 hours. When they come back through today, all they have to do is check in, check the equipment, and they're free to go. I'm going to go get some straw.
Well, everybody has a different routine, but mine is basically get the straw down there first. To me, because again, it's a symbol, a message to the dogs that we're stopping. We're not going on, so they can relax. Then I take their booties off. Then I get the food ready for them and feed them as quickly as possible. And then I leave them alone so that they can rest.
Racing dogs for a long time, kind of a family tradition, I guess. My grandpa started at Iditarod, Joe Riddington. He started the Iditarod in '73, and we've been following his footsteps ever since. Just a good race, and a lot of hills. It's the hardest 200 I've ever done.
I am Julie Chakro, and we're both here actually because our professor, Dr. Whartonby, he invited us to come up, so we're just here helping out. I'm studying primarily science because I want to be a veterinarian.
I'm going for environmental science, so I'm doing a lot of sciences too, and that's where we met Dr. Whartonby. He's our biology professor.
We also have a vet here. This is the one place on the trail that they can drop dogs. In fact, we have 13 dogs that were dropped as they came through earlier, the first time through. We'll probably have another 15, maybe 20 more that mushers will drop before the day's over.
I'm Dr. Jerry Nybakken from Soldotna, just up here vet checking the race.
Dropping dogs, a term that could be misunderstood. Literally, it means you're unclipping them from the team and you're handing them over to a race volunteer and saying, hey, this dog's not going to run with me the rest of the race. It could be for any number of reasons. Dog might have lost its desire to run. It might be tired and have a sore wrist or any other type of thing.
We're getting our work up, but we're learning.
You know, they come in and we try to give them as much love and, you know, caring as we can give them. But the mushers, you know, you can really tell the dogs that are cared for because they're eager to be pet and they don't shy away. So most of them are pretty friendly.
Yeah.
You know, it's just fun to be here and be able to pet them all and, you know, just help out. Neither of us have our own dogs because our apartments don't allow for them. So we're kind of, you know, eager to just give out as much dog love as we can and receive as well.
We're having a good time.
Tim Osmar, wearing bib number 1, is the son of Dean Osmar. Dean, a former winner of the Iditarod, started the T200 for local mushers, specifically for his son Tim. Tim has benefited by his dad's idea. He first ran the Iditarod in 1986. Since then, he has finished among top leaders in the Iditarod more than a few times, and he has won the Yukon Quest.
Back in '79, fished commercially, had an old skiff that we weren't using anymore, and this guy who had some dogs wanted it, so we did a little trade. I've had a real good time doing the long distance dog races. If you're not running, you're just standing there holding onto the sled, cruising along. You don't want to fall asleep and fall off your sled with a 10-mile-an-hour wind blowing over you and you're not doing anything. So, you know, it's just like standing around out in the parking lot. If you're not doing anything, you're going to get cold. But if you go jog around the parking lot, you're probably going to be warm. So that's basically how it works. You're constantly worried about hurting your leader, so you're keeping a real good focus on what's immediately in front of the trail in front of him, and hopefully you can slow down at the right time or stop or whatever it takes, you know, whether it's a snow machine or a moose hole or a tree. But you have to have that front end that always wants to go, come hell or high water, you know. You got to get the right combination of dogs in front that have the most attitude, which is heart. Those dogs that will always get up and pull you out of a checkpoint, those are priceless. That's the one that'll sleep on the couch. If you're giving them more rest than you are running, then they'll never really lose it. If you have a good team with a good attitude, you know, they'll always be excited to go. Come in and watch me hook up this team and tell me if you don't think they like it. And if you really don't think so, they'll jump in the sled and go with me and see what you think, you know.
The expanse of the Caribou Hills and its network of trails offers many choices. Local volunteer snowmobilers place over 1,000 markers to keep the teams on the course. It takes more than a handful of volunteers to make a race happen. The day before, all the dogs had their physical examination by a team of veterinarians. Upon passing their physical, the dogs got a medallion stamped with T200 on them, which means they are ready to run.
King, and I'm doing the vet check forms on their shots. Check and make sure that they have their distemper, hepatitis, para, influenza, parvo, corona, and rabies shots.
Dr. Hermanson. I'm Dr. Tabitha Perkovich. We're checking in the dogs.
A team of veterinarians that are checking over every dog and just making sure that dogs are sound and ready to race. They want to see that their weight is good, their hydration is good, their feet are healthy. They look into their eyes to make sure the dogs are just happy and healthy dogs. I mean, you want to start a race with a good-looking team. They're listening for heart murmurs, irregular heartbeat, the same stuff they'd listen to if you were going to a checkup. They want to make sure that these are athletes. Dogs are running hundreds of miles in a winter, even before they race. All kinds of opportunity to have a cut, some sort of sore in the pad, and if the dog isn't cared for before the race, those will show up, and they want to make sure the dogs start the race with healthy feet.
Bruce Cox, Kasiloff, part of the road crew for the start of the race.
Jeff King, Denali Park.
Lisa Frederick. This is Salem. This is his first race.
My name's Lynette Perrine. I'm just checking out the dogs. I'm going to be out at Caribou Lake, at the checkpoint out at Caribou Lake. It isn't just a matter of dollars and cents. It's many, many, many hours and the time that you spend with your dogs. To be able to put a team together that functions as a team to compete at this level is, just dogs. They're just doing their dog thing.
I'm from right here on the peninsula in Kasiloff.
Lance Mackey.
My name's Jane, and I'm from Soldotna.
Ante from Pasila.
Heather Zimmerman from Talkeetna.
I'm Dexter Cancer. I'm from Colorado.
James Wheeler from Pasila.
Eric Nyholm. I'm from Hope.
Mark Newell, Wasilla.
I'm Sebastian from Whitehorse, and I came over to do the Trustamina 200.
What do you like about dogs?
Well, it's a very loyal animal, and it takes you places where you normally couldn't go without them.
Stephanie. I'm from Germany.
Ray Reddington. Burbank.
More and more good teams every year.
But the 200-mile course has more safety features. There are 4 checkpoints. Checkpoint is 4 corners at mile 25.
I don't know why they love to run, but I'm sure glad they do. Training sled dogs is a matter of controlling their high attitude, maintaining that positive outlook they have and that desire to run. It's really exciting. These dogs love to run. They express their emotions through running. I mean, they run and they feel joy in running. Training is almost year-round. Okay, you're hooking up the dogs, anywhere from 8 to 12 or more dogs, and you're going on a run in the hills with a sled. And basically it's getting the dogs used to the miles, and you might bring some straw and cooker out and bed them down for a while, get them used to the checkpoint routine. They love to run, but even going a 200-mile race, some of them are going to get a little bit tired. I remember being in the Boy Scouts and going on long hikes, and we'd have to wake up in the morning, and the Boy Scout leader would have to say, "Hey guys, we got to get going," and maybe we didn't want to, but we did, and our soreness, we walked out of the soreness, and we ended up having a great time. That's about what happens with the dogs partway through the race. Is they might be sleepy, they might rather curl up on the straw a little bit, but you get the booties on and you say time to go, and they get up and they go, and just a few minutes into the run, they're starting to get excited again. Well, it's a complex relationship. Some dogs are submissive and they want to please, and some of the best leaders are submissive dogs because they want to please you. Leaders are definitely different. You can get a good leader that's a dominant male, and you could get a good leader that's a submissive female, or any combination of that. They like dealing with the pressure of being up front and making the turns. They got to be able to want to run just a little faster than all the dogs that are breathing down their neck. Part of training is spending, months and months and months getting that relationship with the dog so that they know what you want, and when you say it, they do it, and they trust you. When you tell them to do something, that you're going to take care of them and they're not going to regret it. It's very important. So there is relationship. Probably about the worst thing that can happen if you let go of the sled and fall off, because the team will keep going and they'll speed up. Because they only know to run, they don't know to stop. You have to make them stop. If you're in that situation, you wait for the next vehicle to come by, whether it's another dog sled or a snow machine, and you hop on and you chase after that team, because who knows where they're going to go. If they know where the trail goes, they'll just keep going.
Much of the race is run at night. Darkness adds another dimension. Most teams arrive at Clam Gulch after dark of day 1. Clam Gulch Lodge is the 100-mile mark. Another food and dog drop, this is the turnaround point. Here the teams have to take a 6-hour mandatory rest before heading back up the incoming trail.
You feed them real good. Commercial dog food, whatever kind you're using. You'd have lamb, you'd have ground beef, you'd have ground beaver, ground turkey, a lot of salmon, Then there's all kinds of supplements we put in there too, powdered meat, SDX, just extra fat, vitamins, glucosamine supplements. There's a bunch of stuff that goes into making a bucket of dog food, really.
Checkpoint Caribou Lake at mile 45.
Leaving Four Corners and getting to Caribou Lake takes them up into some high country that can be a little bit windswept because there's no trees, and that can sometimes be an eye-opener for somebody from out of the area.
A cabin on the edge of the lake usually offers water from a hole drilled through the ice of the lake.
Checkpoints are partly a safety. Everybody's where they're supposed to be and everybody's moving along okay. Check to make sure you have mandatory gear, and you've got to have an axe, snowshoes, sleeping bag, cooker, booties for the dogs, and enough food for the dogs. And that's pretty much the standard stuff in all races. And if you don't have that stuff, you have to turn around and go get it. Smaller race, and in the Iditarod, there are times you do and do not want a booty. Going over ice when you want their claws to have traction, you might want to have those booties off. You could go 10, 20 miles without booties and it's not going to hurt them at all. It's kind of hard to categorize mushers because mushers are all individuals, but you know, some of the friendliest people I've ever met. We're all in the same boat and we're all getting tired, we're all getting sore, and we're all going through the same thing, and there's a lot of camaraderie that gets built up. I ran a large chunk of the race with Ed Hopkins, and our dog teams would pass several times, and the dogs started barking at each other. It was both Ed and I started laughing after a while because it was just really funny because the dogs, you know, got to know that other team and they'd bark at it. This is a good mushers race. It's a good, tough 200-mile race, a good, honest race. It's a lot of fun. The checkpoints are good. Mushers like it. Well, the purse is one reason mushers like it because you know, it pays $10,000 for first place. That attracts pretty fast teams. Total purse is about $25,000. I often run a very young team in the Tustamina 200, and frequently people will say, well, I hope you win, and I keep having to tell them that, look, I'm running yearlings. I'm not out there to win, I'm out there to show them what racing is. And people have all kinds of motivations for coming to races. It's a big adventure. You know, these dogs are living the lives that a lot of pet dogs only dream about. It's fun for the dogs, bottom line.
As the sun sets, another race is nearing a close. The teams have fulfilled their goal. The place a team finishes is in the books, will be recognized with awards, mentioned in the press, but the Tustamina 200 will live forever in the memory of the mushers. In south-central Alaska on the Kenai Peninsula lies a small community east of Soldotna at the headwaters of the Kenai River called Cooper Landing. Fishing was, and still is, the main draw to Cooper Landing. Well, the fishing is still as good as ever, but the history of the area can also fill our creel with many historical stories of man and the land. During the 1950s, Cooper Landing met the modern world. And what better way to learn about this exciting period than from someone who grew up in the midst of it all?
I'm Ken Lancaster. I was born in Anchorage on August 13th, 1943. Lived in Anchorage and went to grade school there up till 1949 and moved down to Cooper's Landing, 150 miles south of Anchorage. The reason we moved down to Cooper Landing, my dad had a dream to move down there and essentially live off the land. And there wasn't very many people in Cooper's Landing when we first moved down there in 1949. And lived in Cooper's Landing, went to school there up through the 8th grade, and built our Point of View Lodge on Kenai Lake. We had cabins up behind there. Well, we wanted to live off the land by being able to make souvenirs off of local moose horns and wood and out of some of the rocks, and we had clay in the bank there where we dug out for the lodge. Actually made some souvenirs out of the red clay there. Painted them and then sold them in our little gift shop we had at the lodge. And did that for years and years. Actually patented the first cache. The reason the name came, Dad said it was our point of view, ours and our family, and people that all came, they spent all the time looking out the front windows or up on the patio or roof, we called it, looking out at the view and taking pictures. And then in later years, we built the cache out in front. And every once in a while, you'll still find postcards of the cache around Alaska. The lodge was started in the fall of 1954, and we built it right through the winter, and we opened it up then May 1st of 1955. In the winters of 54 and 53, I was 11, 12 years old, and my mother and I peeled the logs for the lodge that came from Hope. We hauled them over from Hope on an old 48 Ford dump truck we had, and then Mother and I peeled them, like I say, and Dad and Chuck Johnson cut the logs and fitted them and built the lodge all through the winter. And another job I had was keep the snow shoveled out of the project so they could keep working. That's when I wasn't in school.
What were the challenges of building a lodge in Cooper Landing in the early 50s?
Having enough logs, for one thing. It seems like every time we turn around, we'd run out of logs. We had to drive over to Hope and tell Mr. Miller we needed more logs, and he'd cut us some more, and then we'd have to go back over again. And our old 1948 Ford dump truck, which wasn't the most reliable piece of machinery around back in the early 50s.
As a young man, Ken was an avid and active learner. His interest in the woods and the land also included an interest in documenting the lifestyle on film. So let's sit back and enjoy some early footage of a teenager's efforts with a movie camera. Like all technology, some things never change, like winter temperatures.
Oh, it was cold. You'd have to keep the camera warm because otherwise it just wouldn't work. So you had to keep it inside your shirt. And of course, being young, well, I didn't always do that, so I had a lot of trouble taking pictures in the wintertime. I used to take the camera with me everywhere. No place I went without a camera back when I was a kid, once I got started taking pictures.
Ken had some help in learning his way to the right end of that camera.
Carl Martin was a real good friend of mine, worked for Civil Service up in Anchorage in the warehouse out at the base out of Fort Rich. And he got to coming down to the lodge on the weekends, and we got to be good friends. And he's actually the one that taught me how to take movies, at least as best as I did. These pictures are taken with an 8mm Keystone camera. Took a lot of practice, and it finally conned me into getting a tripod, and so some of the pictures are a little steadier after you get the tripod. Took primarily sheep pictures and outdoor pictures, fish pictures, that type of thing, but most of the sheep pictures are all taken up on the Langle Mountains right up behind the lodge. When we went in the boat, well, we primarily went up Kenai Lake and either went fishing or went hunting. We took lots of pictures when we were up the lake in the boat too, but I love to be on the water. I love to go up the lake. Water skiing at Kenai Lake was not common because the water is very, very cold and really gets your attention. I water skied a couple of times. I can't swim, but managed to stay up. The summer months were terrifically hectic. I used to guide on the Rush and take people fishing up there, and also on the Upper Kenai River. I was one of the first Upper River guides, Bill Fuller and myself, that actually guided up in that area. Now, of course, I was just a kid, but you know, they needed somebody to show them where Russian River was and where the falls were and where it was easy to catch fish in those days. And it was a 3-mile hike in there, and so it took an hour and a half to go in there and then fish for several hours so people got their limit of 2, and then we clean them and walk back out. So it was quite a little trip. When I first started guiding on the Russian River, really just came about by accident. People were staying in the cabins or upstairs in the rooms, and they'd want to go fishing. So I'd take them fishing, and they'd give me a few bucks, and it just became to be a summer business then for several years until I graduated from high school. I took people hunting as well as fishing. The Hampton's Ferry down at what was called Hampton's Lodge back in those days, and it's been changed now, and that particular ferry is setting in front of Gwynn's, and they've got it painted green, which was the original color back when we first used to ride. It used to cost $1 to ride across the ferry so you go fishing.
In the 50s, Cooper Landing was rich in game. The human population was less in those days, and hunting was a value. From meat to fur, hunting was more than popular. It was an economical resource for the people of the time. Some people actually lived off the land.
Back in those days, it wasn't out of the norm to live all winter on fish and moose. That's exactly what we did. Once in a while, we'd get to go up Kenai Lake and go goat hunting up on the Three Sisters Mountains at the end of the lake there, and have some goat in our larder, but sheep hunting was closed, of course, in the early 50s, so there was no sheep hunting. Most people hunted bears back in those days was for bear hide. Some, like we did, we kept the meat and smoked it typically and made jerky out of it. If it was a young enough bear, why, it wasn't too bad to eat, but they're a little bit greasy. Well, my first bear I got when I was 13, and it was Johnson Brothers rifle up there in Cooper's Landing. He told me that if I got my first bear with one shot, that he'd give me a lever action 300 rifle, a Savage. And so a bear showed up in Hermberger Slide up on the Langle Mountains up behind the lodge, and I got a hold of Harold Johnson and shot the bear with one shot, and he consequently gave me the rifle. So it was that was my first rifle, my first bear bow. Harold Johnson was noted for the big 450 bear gun that he actually built and constructed. The only time we ever hunted was when we needed meat. Moose was a big part of our life. Dad would make steaks and hamburger and roasts and stew meat and whatnot. Didn't waste any of it. He'd save the fat, and he'd also split the hide and make gloves and shirts and pants out of the hide too. So we wore those again then hunting then the next year. So after he dried the hide and tanned the hide. So and moose was a big staple in our life. My dog Sandy. She was a dog. Dad always liked collie dogs, and she actually moved down from Anchorage with us, and she was my favorite dog. Probably maybe my best friend back in those days. She was always with me. She wasn't too far from my side. Caught a lynx up in one of my cubby sets up behind the lodge on my trap line, and brought it into the house. And trapped for money, essentially, something to do in the wintertime and spare time, and trapped mainly for lynx and coyote, some ermine and mink. And then early in the spring months when the season opened, trapped a few beaver on Quartz Creek. And did that for about 6 or 7 years, I guess, up until I got out of high school. People need to know that was so nice about it was that the fact you could walk up into Resurrection Pass and visit the old cabins, Doc Romey's cabin, Harry Johnson's cabins, and even Luke Elwell's cabin up on Upper Russian. And you know, you could stay in those cabins, and as long as you left it like you found it, why, it was okay to use them, and everybody understood that. You didn't have to leave notes and lock doors and all that. And I think it was a lot better way of life back in those days in that regard for true recreation and true enjoying of the wildlife and the outdoors. We used to go out in the Resurrection Pass, and we'd walk into where there's big tall stands of timber where the moose in the late fall would knock their horns off. And then that's what Dad would make the souvenirs out of that we sold in the gift shop.
But let's jump back in time a little and see an earlier piece of the local history of Kenai Lake. A lady came to Alaska in 1915 named Nellie Neal. Nellie was not a timid lady. She contracted to feed the construction workers building the Alaska Railroad. When supplies and transportation were hard to come by, Nellie delivered hot meals in wash tubs to the construction site. In the winter, she brought the meals in on her dog sled. In summer, she necked her supplies in by sledge. Nellie was more than a cook. Gold miner, big game hunter, trapper, dog musher, guide. She did it all. But when the railroad was completed, her contract ended. But Nellie, like all the early Alaskan entrepreneurs, didn't let that stop her. Now she was known far and wide as Alaska Nellie. Years before the 50s, Nellie settled in the Seward side of Kenai Lake. She opened a roadhouse and museum. Nellie's guest book soon held the notable names of presidents, European royalty, authors, movie stars, and generals. Nellie's favorite was Will Rogers. Nellie started the first ferry boat and cruise operation on Kenai Lake. This was long before there was a road to the Point of View Lodge of the 50s. Her boat was 36 feet long and hauled hunters, homesteaders, and postal workers. Today, there are more modern boats that offer cruises to Kenai Lake. They will take you to Porcupine Island, a place that was one of Ken Lancaster's favorites. Ken's life wasn't limited to the lodge. He had opportunities to see other parts of the state. A family flight to Tangle Lakes in the north near Paxton, known for its excellent grayling fishing, was a favorite back then and still is today.
Grayling are so good to eat, and they're so much fun to catch, and I love to fly fish. That's my favorite type of fishing, is to fly fish. My brother-in-law lived in Anchorage, my sister's husband, and his name was Bullet, and he'd fly down every once in a while. He was quite an avid pilot.
Was flying any different in those days?
It was quite an experience to go flying back in those days in the wintertime, because there wasn't any heat in the cabin other than just motor heat that came back from the engine, and it was not warm flying. But he was quite a pilot. He flew us all over and did a lot of sightseeing with it and whatnot. Well, some of the events we had at our Point of View Lodge were a lot of graduations from Seward High School, and had a lot of after prom parties and after graduation parties, and also had a lot of weddings there. An awful lot of weddings. People would come down and get married out on the lawn or out on the deck or up on the roof and whatnot. And so a lot of different events like that. We had a lot of traffic back and forth from Anchorage particularly. And then when they hit oil out Swanson River in 1957, well, then people came from this end of the peninsula, the Kenai Soldotna area particularly, because it was the hub. They'd drive up there for dinner and Saturdays and Sundays to stay overnight and have lunch and breakfast and that type of thing. Mother actually cooked and served 3 meals a day, and then of course my other job then, once we got the restaurant open, was to wash dishes. It's different to see people come down all dressed up and whatnot, because we weren't used to anybody getting dressed up around Cooper's Landing, say the least.
Ken Lancaster was a lucky kid. He lived a huck-finned existence. His family built a lodge with a fantastic view of Kenai Lake and the mountains. What else could a kid want? Well, maybe some money of his own. Needless to say, jobs were scarce, so he ran trap lines, among other things, to make enough money to buy the teenage dream, cars and trucks.
It was kind of special, it was kind of expensive. That's what I worked, trapping and taking people hunting and fishing for and whatnot. That's how I earned my money for that. Did most of the work on that myself outside of, I had an outfit in Anchorage that did the chroming of the bumpers and the tailgate chains and that type of thing. And they also took off the door handles and the hood latch for me, and they had secret latches for them, and then they also painted it, and then I buffed it out myself. Pretty special to have those kind of rigs. They were hard to keep up and take care of back in those days, especially in the wintertime. You just couldn't keep them clean. And
bringing a modern road to replace the old Jeep trail across the Kenai Peninsula spurred the economy of Cooper Landing.
During road construction, a lot of them worked on the road jobs, and then so those of us that had our own businesses, Hamilton's Place was there, of course, and they sold gas and had a bar. Sunrise Inn was there. When we first moved to Cooper Landing, that we went by train to Moose Pass and then drove over on the road then, because the trail really, because there wasn't a road completed around Turnagain Arm. In 1954-55, then they got the road opened all the way down where you could drive. And then road construction started for the finish road out of what we called across the swamp, across the Kenai Burn. And that's when major road construction started. Dad and myself and our partner Chuck Johnson, we actually built a bunkhouse to house some of the road builders, the construction workers. And it held 32 people that stayed at our place. When we first moved to Cooper's Landing, why Dad built 5 cabins, and there was two sides. They were duplex type cabins. We didn't call them duplexes back then. They were just 2 cabins, but it was actually one building. And they were just an open room with a bed in the side. And those cabins today have actually been sold. When the lodge burned down in 1975, why the cabins were sold off, and they're actually at the Kenai Lake Lodge now. They've been changed a lot and painted in different colors, and they're actually up on the hill at Kenai Lake Lodge and still rented today as we speak. Must have been built pretty good.
When he was only 11 years old, Ken was involved in a major Cooper Landing construction project.
In 1955, it became apparent that we needed power, electricity in Cooper's Landing. We were all using generators, primarily diesel, although some of the summer folks did use electric generator or gasoline generators. So Cooper Lake Power Project, which had been on the back burner for many, many years, back with the Corps of Engineers, from clear back in the late 30s and early 40s, finally came to fruition to be a real project, and we started construction on that. I built a barge, along with my dad's help, of course, and I barged the first material up to the job site up at up Kenai Lake, up to where the powerhouse sits today. There was no road around the other side past Snug Harbor, so a road had to be built then so they could haul the larger supplies in, of course. But we did all the surveying and built the first cabin up there, hauled a generator up there to that site while the road was being constructed. Very slow, tedious project. It'd take about 14 hours to make a barge trip from Cooper's Landing the 14 miles up to the dam site. So it was a long project, a lot of fun for a kid though, and I was just a kid back in those days, so it was really fun.
Fires are part of the Kenai Peninsula ecology. Ken remembers one of the big ones.
Fire started in 1959 across from the lodge there on Kenai Lake. And it started in relation to the construction was going on for clearing the power lines for the power lines coming out of the Cooper Lake hydroelectric plant, which is just in the process of being completed. Helicopter was used to transport officials back and forth to see what was going on and whatnot, and he did land at the lodge there and spent some time where the people stayed at the lodge while the fire was going on. Well, when the earthquake happened in 1964, I was in Soldotna, and my folks we just sold the lodge, and my folks were up at the lodge, and so I immediately got in the truck and tried to get up there, and I couldn't get there because the bridge at the end of Kenai Lake had fallen in. I got just to the bridge, and couldn't get across the bridge. And so eventually they got it, the military came in, they got a Bailey Bridge put across there. And my folks had a dump truck, 2.5-ton dump truck. They had all their personal belongings put on, and we loaded that, or took the truck and drove it on down across the Bailey Bridge on down to Kenai and put it on Red Dodge's C-123 and flew it to Anchorage, and they drove out over the highway. Well, in 1977, I retired from the Teamsters and driving truck all the time and started building Justice Cedar homes in the Kenai Peninsula Central area.
Like father, like son. Ken's father built the first home on the Kenai, and Ken returned the favor and built the next one for his father.
When I was building Justice Cedar homes out off of Mackey Lake Road, and it was a custom Justice Cedar home that they'd one like they wanted, with a prow front on it and nice big windows and whatnot, and just a one bedroom house, but it was what they wanted, a custom home to retire in.
Considering the years apart, was the construction of the two houses different?
Drastically. Everything here was pre-cut, pre-formed, and just essentially just assemble it. It all comes marked where every part goes, and it's real easy to construct. Just a matter of taking the time to do it. So a lot of difference. And plus, we built this in the summertime versus 11 months of winter too. So it was a lot easier to build in the summertime than build in the winter.
The Point of View Lodge is long gone. It burned down years ago. Ken still lives on the Kenai in Soldotna, where he has raised a family of his own, who are now having kids of their own. 2 of his kids came at the same time. How did an old trapper and hunter handle raising twins?
Always something to do, never a dull moment, especially when the twins came along. But, you know, everything had to be done twice. You had to buy 2 coats and 2 pairs of shoes and just double everything. So it's a different experience. I don't know what people do that have quadruplets.
The Kenai River, flowing 82 miles through the Kenai Peninsula, starts its journey at Kenai Lake. It is the home first of fish and later of man. The river takes on many faces as it travels towards the Cook Inlet. The upper part of the Kenai River shows off its brilliant turquoise set against the mixed vegetation. It is a highway of time. Before man, and now with him, the river flows through many lives. Indeed, in the days of yore, the river was the highway for all people. People like Ken Lancaster, who were raised on the river, have a lifetime bonded connection to this body of water that is beyond the material.
Well, having grown up in Cooper Landing, born in Anchorage, and lived all my life on the river, there's been a lot of change. And that change is visible if you look behind me at the construction project here at the mouth of Soldotna Creek in the middle of Soldotna, and the restoration we've had to do versus the way it was 55 years ago when I was born here. It didn't need any restoration back in those days, but due to human contact with the riverbanks and the watershed, why things have changed, and it's time to start giving back and rebuilding that habitat so that future generations, our kids and our kids' kids, will have some place to fish and hunt and enjoy the waterways, and not always just be after the resource, but to come and view and enjoy the water itself.
The days of trapping and old faithful collie dogs are now history. The Lancasters are now 3rd and 4th generations on the Kenai Peninsula. From carving a home out of raw timber to contributing to a life of public service, Ken Lancaster finds himself on the other end of the camera. Once he recorded history. Now he is making history after dedicating his life to a land he loves. Today we have the toughest, the longest, the most endurance-demanding cross-country snowmobile race in the world. 2,000 miles of bone-bouncing, muscle-flexing ride across the biggest state in the nation, Alaska. It's the annual Tesoro Iron Dog. The race runs north from Wasilla to Nome to Fairbanks. The Tesoro Iron Dog is the supreme test of man and machine. Speed is the essence, up to 110 miles per hour, where terrain and weather permits. The stretch may look easy, but it's only a breather for things to come over the next 2,000 miles. Jackie McGann from Kenai is one of the racers. On the ground, we will see the race from a camera placed on his helmet, and he will give us a perspective from a contestant's viewpoint. Jackie races summer and winter. In the summer, he races sprint cars and trucks. In the winter, you will find him racing across the snow. Competition comes over to satisfy their curiosity, like on a car lot. Can't kick the tires, but you can share a joke, and then look serious, ask a few diplomatic questions, rock the shocks, and take a seat to make sure it fits. The race marshals are on hand from start to finish. They are the judges and the jury. The safety inspection over, the snow machines are transported up to the start in Wasilla. It's a bright and clear morning for the official start. The increasing popularity of the race has drawn many sponsors from Alaska. Trail groomer gives a smiling wave. Fans, family, and racers mingle, saying their last goodbyes, be careful, and good luck wishes.
Bib 16 going out first on Polaris snow machines. Wayne Drake and Jackie McGahan.
Jackie, in the #1 position, is wearing a helmet camera from which we can watch the race from a driver's view.
Once they're underway, there'll be 1-minute intervals between the teams on their way out. 1. And the Iron Dog 2000 for 2000 underway. First.
Now you're in the driver's seat. Jackie's helmet camera takes us onto the trail. As we leave Big Lake, we leave the houses and roads of groomed, developed Alaska behind us. Behind checkpoints, it is man, machine, and wilderness. These folks ride for bucks and titles, like a $100,000 purse that will be divided between the top 11 places, including a rookie award. And contingency awards are being offered by snowmobile manufacturers. The only way to follow the entire race is from an airplane. We take off from Wasilla Airport and attempt to keep up.
It's an endurance race. It isn't always the guys that go out there and are the fastest. It's a lot of times it's the strategies that play in.
Strategy plays a major part. Mandatory layovers are required. On the northward leg to Nome, 28 layover hours are a must at 3 different 6-hour minimum stops. Nome holds the pro class riders for 40 hours, and then 18 hours layover at 2 stops are required before the run into Fairbanks.
That first hour all the way to Squintna, it's pretty fast trail.
The first checkpoint is Squintna, which is located at the confluence of the Squintna and the Yetna River.
After Squintna is where it gets rough. From Squintna on up to Puntilla Lake, it's just brutal. The snow is deep. It's so deep that these machines, the short tracks, they stay in one spot, they stay in one groove, and so it gets really bumpy, real bumpy. If you had a long track, you could get out away from that, but not with these race sleds. You got to stay right in the groove.
The first section of trail winds through dense spruce forests. The trail is bumpy and jarring on the rider. With 50-plus teams in determined pursuit, you have to maintain your speed around blind corners and lumps that could send you airborne. Caution and speed are a fine mix.
As far as seeing spectators out on the trail, we saw groups past Puntilla Lake, and that's 4 or 5 hours into the race.
Puntilla Lake is the second checkpoint on the trail.
Hi, my name is Kim Platt, and my crew and I run the checkpoint here at Puntilla every year. And within the next half hour or so, we should be seeing Iron Dog snow machines start coming through. What makes it unique is its location. It's not the type of thing you can drive to. It's by snow machine or by airplane only in the wintertime. Well, we rode up on our snow machines. It's about 133 miles, I guess, from Disk2 Landing.
The racers come into the checkpoint. It has been 65 miles since the first stop in Squintina. The trail crosses a 3,000-foot pass and could be one of the toughest sections of the race. Puntilla is also a pit stop for man and machine. As quickly as they can, they refuel, check their fluids, and take a quick look at their engines. Here, they must sign in. They take a quick drink for themselves and maybe an energy bar. At this early point in the race, the teams are all still mostly bunched up together. From this point on, distances between the teams will begin to widen. When racers are hyped, it sometimes becomes necessary to tell them which way the trail runs out of the checkpoint. This is also a place to check your standing. What teams have checked in and out before yours?
Gas on the trail is always a concern, how far you can get. The deeper the snow, of course, the more you consume, the less your range is. There was some concern about making it to Puntilla with as much snow as we had.
Gas at these checkpoints is hauled in. Ronnie Davis, our pilot from Casila, a second-generation Iron Dog pilot, says it's time to go and catch the racers. All systems go, the teams are back on full throttle, and support aircraft takes off in pursuit.
Going from Puntilla to Roan in that leg is wise to get that out of the way, because the big storms can come in on that Ptarmigan Pass, and then you'll be breaking trail in deep, deep snow.
Heading towards Roan, wide open valleys let the machine scream at 90 miles an hour, maybe faster.
From Puntilla to Roan at 75 miles.
This is perhaps the most scenic part of the trail.
It's Alaska in the raw. Know you're that far away from home and mark trail to get you back.
This is a cross-country race that follows rivers and trails, sometimes through deep snow, which can slow the racers. The Iron Dog Trail covers a vast area of Alaska across mountain ranges and through valleys. The route is a fair sampling of the geological variety of Alaska.
From Puntilla down into Roan, it's beautiful. You're in the Alaska Range, and you drop down on the Kuskokwim River. The river is just, it's beautiful. You're down through the canyons there. It's a river run all the way down to Roan.
The checkpoint at Roan is in the remains of an old roadhouse. It is the most remote location. Volunteers operate out of a 10-man tent warmed by a wood stove. We won't be stopping here as landings are difficult. They wave as we go by.
Roan to Nikolai is a 74-mile stretch.
As the sun goes down, we plan to land for our first overnight stop in McGrath, 341 miles into the race. Located at the confluence of the Kuskokwim and Tokatna rivers, the Kuskokwim River leads us into McGrath, checkpoint 5. In McGrath, the pilots tuck their aircrafts to bed for the night. We all feel relieved to know the weather allowed us to get this far. It is 20 below zero Fahrenheit, and so far the skies are clear. The snow machines are fueled and corralled together near the airport for the night.
Most teams like to take a 12-hour layover when they do. When you get off the clock, you punch in and everybody's sitting around at the Tucusko house. You have a long race, you're putting everything you have into it, and then when you're off the clock, it's just a bunch of friends. You're not allowed to work on your snowmobiles during the layovers. You have to work on them on the clock. Either you work on it before you check in. Most people would work on their machines after a layover, get everything ready, get all their tools ready, all their parts laid out.
Cross-country racing is hard on machines. Hitting a tree can bend or break a trailing arm. It can be fixed temporarily with a wrench for a splint tied on with a rope out on the trail. In McGrath, mishaps like this can be fixed. Time is always a wasting in the race. Fuel up, Throttle down and the dogs are running back on the trail. Now it's time for pilot Ronnie to fuel up so we can get back over the trail.
From McGrath to Ophir is 63 miles. Ophir would be the next gas stop. After the first day of riding, the muscles are sore, the bones are creaking, I guess. It's hard to get going that second day. That'll last for about 3 miles. You can just get on your machine and go. You'll shake the kinks out within an hour.
Heading out of McGrath, the racers run through another section of bumpy trail in a black spruce forest and then into taller stands of white spruce. Next stop, Ophir, mile 384. Once a placer mining area, Ophir is now a ghost town where gas has been hauled in for a pit stop only. No possibility for a layover here.
From Ophir to Poorman is 99 miles. We ran out of gas on that run in 2000. Snow conditions were just right, and we were still about 20 miles short.
Next stop, Poorman. We land in deep snow. This is the most remote checkpoint. It has a population of 0. Spenard Builders has been here for 3 days and hauled in more than a ton of equipment, food, and lodging facilities from Galena and Ruby. Ronnie is used to landing in snow. He hunts and traps in the winter around Lake Clark in the Iliamna area. He parks the aircraft and heads for the cabin in hopes of something hot and tasty. What used to be a solitary wall tent now has as a neighbor a wood cabin built by Spenard Builders. This is an optional layover. Spenard Builders has put in bunks, warm coffee, and food for those in need. Let's meet the SBS host.
Oh, I'm Roger Cuddell, Spenard Builder Supply. Commercial sales. This is my 1-week annual holiday. We call it blue goo. You poke them full of gas, liquid, a snack, and then see you next year.
I'm Steve Madela. I work for SBS, and out here at Poorman, I'm camp cook, fuel pumper, and whatever needs done type person.
At this remote site, a satellite phone calls in race standings.
My name's Butch Novak. Been with Spenard almost 35 years now. In '96, I ran the Iron Dog, and this was one of the checkpoints that was not manned, and we had problems finding it. Finally found it, and the wind was blowing. It was cold. It was miserable, and so I went back. When we got back to town, I talked to Stan Smith, my boss, and he says, "Well, we'll man it."
Butch and his son Jeremy look at the times in and out of Poorman. When the teams arrive, they have to jump out, man the pumps, meet and greet, and pass out bodily liquids for humans. Jackie recounts the previous miles of trail.
A little stiff. We were just real concerned about gas. I've had another 5 miles left. Took our time there on that section of trail. 90-some miles and real soft snow and hard on gas.
Gas in the machine, blue goo in the body, and back on the throttle.
From Poorman, it's 72 miles into Ruby. Trail, it's a mining road. It's fast. There's places there where we're doing 100. From Ruby to Galena is 52 miles. Ruby is the first place that you drop down on the Yukon River. It's usually a 100-mile-an-hour run.
Where will you take your layovers, and how long will they be? Strategy could now be a secret. Did you listen to advice? Will you push your machine too hard and run out of gas, or worse?
It's amazing to see on the trail the competition between each team. These guys they're competitive right down to the bone. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it be snowmobiles or bicycles, they'd be competitive.
Galena, population 675. Another layover option at mile 588.
Strategically good place to lay over because it puts you out into the Norton Sound on the next day at daylight, and that's a good place to be, is going across the Norton Sound during the day.
Snow machine travel is heavy on the Yukon River from Galena to Nolata to Kaltag. This section of the frozen waterway is shared with residents checking trap lines, hunting or hauling freight, and passengers between villages.
From Galena to Kaltag is 98 miles. It's a pretty good run down the river. It's a 110 mile an hour run.
Depending on the condition, the run into Caltag can be easy or difficult. Wind and snow can cover the trail on the river in minutes. Caltag can offer a break from harsh weather.
Caltag over to Unalakleet is 95 miles. That takes you up through another mountain range. Unalakleet, it's on the edge of the Bering Sea, and you're about ready to go out onto the Norton Sound. From Unalakleet, the next layover point would be Shaktoolik, side of the ocean there. When you pull into a village, it's just amazing to watch these people come out. They're friendly, want to help, smiling all the time. It's just neat. It's neat to see the warm welcome that you get in the villages.
Myron Savitalik.
Joseph Itagia.
Ira.
Muscle cramps are a majority of the problem for the racers. For me, my main problem is kidneys. My lower back will start burning, and you just got to take a break and get up and move. One of the things that we changed this year was raising the handlebars up to where you could stand up with a straight back. It really helps the kidneys out, and it'll give you a chance to take a break. If your handlebars are down low, you're always bent over. The leader of the team, the guy breaking trail, so to speak, he's got the hard job. To keep track of what's going on, you wouldn't want to get separated for very long because it's just lost time. So he spends a lot of time looking back.
Shaktoolik, on a point in Koyak Bay, presents snowdrifts and almost constant winds. From here, the trail takes you to the most exposed section of the entire trail leading from across Norton Bay. This area is notorious for storms. Koyak is at the end of the sea trail. Lodging there can be had at the school. Koyak has been occupied by humans from the southeastern peninsula for thousands of years. There are still almost 300 people living there today. The last layover point before Nome is White Mountain, where lodging, food, and gas are available. This village is on the beautiful Fish River. From White Mountain, the dash starts for the 70 miles left into Nome. Nome, at last.
Nome is deceiving. I come down through there in 2000, and we seen the lights. This was my first year, and I seen the lights of Nome. I thought, oh, thank God we made it. And I tell you, an hour later, I'm still thinking, oh, how much farther do we have to go?
The racers speed into town along the coast of the Bering Sea at 60 miles an hour in anticipation of their 40-hour mandatory layover.
Passing people, it's refreshing, being able to find somebody on the trail. You can imagine 2,000 miles and 30 or 40 teams. You know, you can get spread out quite a ways out there. You see somebody in your sights, you see some snow dust, you'll come around the corner and there'll be a little bit of snow dust in the air, and you know, the little snow crystals are flying, and you think, ooh, there must be somebody up front there. So you push a little bit harder, and pretty soon you'll see them, and then it's a race.
This stop is a welcome one after the coastal winds and sea ice. It has been 1,009 miles of a fast and often bumpy ride with winds biting into the face mask and under layers of duct tape. Bodies are sore and worn, as are some of the machines. It is here that toll can be taken of damage done, and repairs of flesh and metal can be accomplished in the best manner possible under the conditions. This is the end of the trail for the Iditarod, but for practical purposes, a halfway point for the racers of the Iron Dog. When the racers arrive into Nome, they are merely 2 days into the race, 24 hours or so in the trail and 28 hours of layover. One year, the first teams arrived in Nome a mere 39 seconds apart. If you do not arrive in Nome within 48 hours of the leaders, you are not allowed to continue. Nome is the only stop on the trail where the machines are allowed to be stored inside. Driving down Main Street, race teams head for the Nome checkpoint. The machines are placed in a maintenance shop. At all other layover locations, the snowmobiles must be stored outside, and the use of electricity to keep the machines warm is prohibited. The racers take a break. So let's sit back and enjoy some early footage of a movie camera. It may have started with just trying to avoid the use of dogs, or that someone had an airplane but couldn't afford wings. Or maybe the winters were long and so was the time on someone's hands. And it could have been the desire to go faster. How to go faster in the direction one wished was often the second consideration. One thing is sure, The invention of the internal combustion engine set minds a-working. Motors were put to uses that the inventor probably never imagined. In Alaska, where winter comes early and leaves late, travel in snow was originally a necessity and is now also a pleasure. To get there is one thing. To get there faster is another. Many of the first snow machines were most likely put together outside the cabin. The idea for their use was probably closer to a truck than a race car. These were working machines to hunt, to trap, to haul water and wood. These were the get-there machines, but they worked. Manufacturers soon picked up on the idea that a snowmobile could be a product. Here we see the family winter truck, sled, auto, and all-purpose get-there transportation. Of course, man and speed has always been good friends. And once you have speed, the next step is who is faster, and we make another friend called a race. A race calls for more friends, competitors and spectators, and someone to tell us what's going on, an announcer.
The river city of Nenana, Alaska, well known throughout the state of Alaska for the Tanana Ice Classic, the Great Nenana Ice Classic. However, on this brisk March morning, well known for the first of what they hope to be an annual event, the 800-mile snow machine race is now underway. Now underway, the first team out.
No, these are not Knights of the Round Table or Arctic bank robbers doing business at 30 below zero, but in the earlier years, snowmobile racers from Nenana to Nome suffered colder temperatures than we have experienced in subsequent years. Let's follow the trail of the racers during their stay in Nome. If a machine needs maintenance, teams from the different manufacturers help each other to cut down on repair time. They are allowed to work on a machine by the minute, minutes which are added to the 40-hour layover.
Probably one of the most common breakdown would be a suspension part, whether it's front suspension or rear suspension. You can imagine 2,000 miles pounding a snowmobile suspension, and it's hard. Springs break, shocks wear out. After your layover is completed in Nome, right across the street is a Tesoro station. You fill up. Once you get your machine filled up with gas and oil, then they'll have an escort. Make sure you get to the edge of town safely, and then you're off.
At the end of the 40-hour layover, the pilots discussed the coming weather. A storm is said to be coming in. It is time to pack up and leave. The trail now doubles back to Ruby before heading to Fairbanks.
It's the same trail that you raced up. It's just twice as bumpy as it was when you went through. From Nenana to Fairbanks is 52 miles. It's fast. Excitement's high. You know where you're going to stack up. Usually you have somebody that you're racing. There's one or two teams that are close to you. You know, if you can push just hard enough, you might be able to edge one of them out.
The excitement builds as spectators and fans of the racers await the first team to cross the finish line at Pike's Landing.
When you round that corner on the Chena River in Fairbanks and you see that finish line, it's just awesome to know that, again, you've completed another race. You know, your family and friends are all there, and it's a great feeling to know that you've achieved the ultimate goal in finishing the race.
The final stretch towards the finish line on the Chena River is a smooth, straight ride. Whoops and hollers are heard as the teams cross the finish line. As the teams finish, hugs and kisses are the first rewards. And finally, the machines are put into a trailer to verify tags. Are these the same engines and machines that started this team's race? Did they finish with all the required gear? Winning teams can cover the 2,000-mile course of Alaska's most challenging terrain in a lapse time of less than 40 hours, averaging 45 miles per hour. Top speeds in the river systems often exceed 110 miles per hour. Combine this with temperatures that sometimes drop to 60 below zero before wind chilled, and you have the toughest snowmobile race in the world. On the west side of Alaska's Cook Inlet lies a piece of Lake Clark National Park and Preserve that sees few visitors. The park is a haven for wildlife, fish, beautiful rivers and streams, all framed by magnificent mountains that bear few tracks of man. Very few people inhabit this side of the Cook Inlet. But there is a summer lodge or two on the coast. The hub of this part of Lake Clark National Park between Tuxedni Bay and Chitna Bay is Silver Salmon Creek, accessible by small airplane from the Kenai or Soldotna Airport.
We have about 75 miles of coastline here that comprises coastal Lake Clark National Park, and that ranges from the head of Tuxedni Bay to the head of Chinitna Bay. And the area of silver salmon is a community, loosely tied together community of about 8 different landowners over a period of about 5 miles.
In this remote location we find Silver Salmon Creek Lodge, a lodge just off the inlet with a creek in front. Salmon call Silver Salmon Creek home, returning each year to spawn and end their cycle at the place of their birth. The return of the salmon brings a congregation of bears, which brings a congregation of bear viewers and photographers. Well, the bears don't come for the photographers, the bears come for the salmon. The king of the forest here is not man, but the brown bear. Silver salmon's landing strip availability is what you call tide dependent. Will Statathite, owner and operator of Clearwater Air, is one of the veteran bush pilots in this part of Alaska. Meeting the airplane on the beach runway, Dave Correa, owner of Silver Salmon Creek Lodge, meets us in his Alaska taxis. These 3- and 4-wheelers pulling trailers will take us up to the lodge. Keep your camera ready. If we are lucky, we will see some bears on the way in. By golly, look, bear. The bears in this part of the park are brown bears, often referred to as Alaskan coastal browns. They are cousins of grizzly bears, which mainly live inland. Estimates say that there are 35 to 45,000 brown and grizzly bears in Alaska as compared to the lower 48, which tallies up around 1,000 grizzlies. Arnie of A Bear Photography heads up the photo program at Silver Salmon Creek Lodge.
Bears always travel the easiest path, so like this path coming down here is quite smooth, so a lot of times you're down here and here they come right down the same way that you've came, and he will probably just come down and then he'll cut through this tall grasses and go off to the right over here. Check out the area and see if there's any kind of food or anything like that he's interested in. And we don't, so he's circling to try to get a smell. He was downwind sniffing us, so he's going to move around a little bit.
The do's are easier probably to list than the don'ts, even though there's plenty of those too. The things that are important to keep in mind are to stay together in a group, stay in the open, don't cut off, here's a don't cut off the bear's access. Meaning that if you are between the bear and the trees behind you, then if a bear feels any stress, his first avenue of retreat is going to be right to the woods. So you don't want to cut him off so that he feels any stress. And we don't want to bring too many people into the area because the bears seem to sense when there's large numbers of people crowding them. So we keep the numbers relatively small, again moving into the habitat of the bears. So we let the bears know that we are approaching them. We don't try to sneak up on bears. We stay out in the open and approach them slowly, and quite often by moving as a unit, as a group unit, quietly and slowly towards the bears, they tolerate our presence quite well.
These hot days are really hard on them. They get out in this heat. Bugs drive them crazy. I mean, as much, probably more so than they bother us. So therefore, ever dropping down like that or laying down on their back and rolling around. And my job is mainly to get them in the best position with lighting and everything else so that they can compose a good shot. In the evenings, all of the coolness, the cool air starts coming in, and everything just kind of softens down, and the light just seems to really bring out the best in your images.
This area has become quite popular for professional photographers to target in terms of the close proximity that we get to free-ranging brown bears. And I say the word free-ranging because we don't have a platform where we bring people to where they're only shooting from one specific area. We are actually moving in to the habitat of the bears. So these free-ranging animals are moving up and down the coast, freely grazing on grass and foraging for fish in the creeks. And it's very popular for photographers to want to maneuver close enough into the habitat of the bears where they can get some good action shots without feeling the constraints of platform-type viewing. Our area doesn't have the legislated controls that Brooks and McNeil have, so there's more of a license, you might say, that we have to kind of develop our own program. We use ATVs in the area to move around in, and that's one of the more successful ways of getting into the areas where the bears are. There's quite a wide range of coast here, so carrying equipment and walking is kind of cumbersome. So we move slowly with ATVs so that we can access these areas where the bears frequent.
When they come through the slough, they leave a pretty distinctive track in this grass.
We worked slowly and over a long period of time to develop a program and actually individually knowing these bears. A lot of them come back year after year. The bears are somewhat acclimated to people, the sounds and noises that people make. There's never been an incident of any aggressive bear encounter on this stretch of coastline. The image of the ferocious Alaskan bear is starting to diminish, and that people are starting to appreciate them more for the gentle creatures that they really are. And that Alaska 50 years ago, people were coming up here to hunt bears, and I think the shift has been away from that.
People in the town over in the peninsula, which is just a short jaunt away, is 40 miles across the water, are taken aback when they come over here by the number of bears and the amount of wildlife here.
We've seen as many as 14 individual bears at one time.
We see bears every day. You never know with any wild animal how many are going to be around, but we generally, an average this year, no less than 5 bears a day.
Here we have a lot of tidal marsh that runs all the way from Silver Salmon Creek north up to Johnson River. It's about a 3-mile stretch, and you'll see a lot of lush vegetation on this tidal grass, and there's a lot of nutrient-rich tuber roots that the bears like to eat, and they'll eat up to sometimes 20 or 30 pounds of this stuff a day. And there's goose tongue out there. There's a lot of vegetables that are just very rich for the bear's appetite. Well, you know, where there's salmon running, people like to come down and fish for salmon. Bears like salmon. So I think there's a kind of a commonality that people feel with bears. They feel kind of a sense of kinship with the bears' behaviors in terms of their antics by scratching on posts, rolling over, playing with their siblings. There's almost, not to sound too anthropomorphic, but there's almost some human-like characteristics to bears I think that people identify with.
According to the observation of experts over the last 100 years, some common traits and characteristics have been found. Bears are adventurous, bears are curious. Their actions are often directed by reason and sometimes by instinct. Bears have superior brain power in the wild animal world, and they guide their day with plan and forethought. They also have a sense of humor. Brown bears are not wanton killers, but they are powerful, they are wild animals, and they can run faster than any human. Running away from a bear is not a good option. In fact, running just may trigger a chase response. Standing your ground or backing away has proven to be highly successful.
As a rule, they'll back off. But one thing, the bears here are not the same as the bears in other areas.
If you had to wear a fur coat in the summer heat, you would take a dip in the creek too. This bear seems to be enjoying the cooling effect and even washes his ears.
Look at all these fish boiling right here, Paul. I mean, these fish are everywhere.
Silver Salmon Creek is small, but it is famous for its run of silvers. The salmon, in turn, draw 2 species of the creek, man and bear.
The primary attraction being the coho, the fresh silvers that come in out of the ocean. And coho is the other name for silvers, and they are coming into these tidally affected streams, which are not large streams, but they do host a large run of silver salmon.
Mom and I came over here for 2 nights, 3 days in September and had a fabulous time, had a wonderful time. Caught salmon within the first 30 minutes we were here. Well, I still have pictures of my mother catching her salmon on my refrigerator. It's one of my favorite pictures.
Fishing with bears, that is, fishing at the same time as bears, requires a knowledge beyond casting a fly or slinging bait.
He's got that smell. They're carrying the fish. They smell those fish. They see them. And, you know, these people just don't know how to react to these guys. if he would have left the fish down in the water and kind of buried it in the bear wouldn't be coming up here. If he keeps following you guys, if he keeps following you with that fish, just throw your fish in the creek. It's a lot easier to let them have the fish than it is to have them chasing you all over. He's gonna follow you guys. He knows you have that fish. All he wants is the fish. He's not worried about you. You should be able to catch another one.
Most people misunderstand bears. I mean, bears don't come after you to attack you. It's usually something like running into their cubs or bothering them or coming onto their food or doing something that with just some knowledge you can avoid. I feel very safe around the bears now.
Fishing etiquette around bears gives them the right of way. If a bear comes into the fishing hole you're in, give him the hole. The Park Service strongly suggests you keep a 100-yard distance between you and the bears. If you hook into a fish and the bear comes into the hole, cut your line and retreat slowly. A fish jumping or splashing at the end of your line will attract the attention of the bear. But he may not identify the fish as being on your line. However, it will get his attention. If the bear is 100 yards away and the fish quits splashing, the bear will often turn his endeavors in another direction. Oliver Curray, David's son, takes us inland from the lodge to Silver Salmon Lake. Oliver has been spending his summers at the lodge since he was a wee tad. The short trail to the lake is bordered by thick brush and berry patches, which of course the bears love. The last few yards to the lake defines what a wetland is. Oliver points to some tooth marks on one of the canoes. Bears will chew on many different things. The Crays keep a couple of canoes here for sightseeing. This shallow lake is the headwaters of Silver Salmon Creek, where most of the salmon migrate to spawn, and subsequently it is closed to fishing. When you are in places like this on the planet, you don't think of shopping centers or social ills. Here you discover reality and begin to realize that the other life is made up. Nature seems to lend itself to Native American flute music. Paul Pike, an American native, is the leader and flutist of Medicine Dream, which is the title song off his first CD titled Identity.
People living a lifestyle surrounded by a lot of stress, commotion, and activities that routinely, on a daily basis, keep them focused on their work and surrounding themselves with activity that is generated by other people. And I think it welcomes itself as a little bit of respite from that when they can venture off into an area where there's just tranquility and some peacefulness and quiet, and they can kind of hear some of the sounds of nature around them and gather kind of a sense of balancing their hectic lives, wherever they may came from, with the sense of having experienced something quiet and peaceful, and that's just generated by nature itself.
I think this is the closest I will ever come to seeing untouched, raw beauty.
Once you move off the road system and you get into an area where there's less people, then you can hear the sounds of nature around you. We hear the trumpeter swans.
Each year a pair of trumpeter swans nest here at Silver Salmon Creek Lake, and if not disturbed, are usually successful in producing offspring called cygnets. Trumpeters are the world's largest member of the waterfowl family. Males average 28 pounds and females 22 pounds. Like all swans, both sexes have identical plumage. Previous to the 1900s, trumpeter swans breeded over a large area of the lower 48 states, but were market hunted almost to extinction. Not much was known at that time about the swan's existence in Alaska. They were first identified in Alaska in 1850, but it wasn't until 1954 that breeding pairs were found evident here. In 1968, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service counted 2,844 trumpeters in Alaska, and they were taken off the National Endangered Species List. However, they are still classified as rare or endangered in some states. The 1990 census indicated over 13,000 trumpeter swans in Alaska, which represents over 80% of the world's population. Back at the lodge, fish is the business. Dave's halibut charter has just come in and the catch has to be cleaned. Dave is the only halibut charter operating on this side of the Cook Inlet and is generally quite successful.
I came to Alaska when I was a small boy at age 3 in 1954, and my parents were school teachers in the bush villages in Pedro Bay on Niliamna Lake and Non-Dalton as well. So I spent a lot of my youth in the wilderness and enjoyed the wide range of activities that the bush offered, hunting, fishing, running boats, and so that was in my blood, I guess you might say, at an early age. And went to grade school in Kenai and college in Fairbanks, and then worked in the field of psychology for a while, and always liked working with people. I couldn't think of a better way to mix working with people and to be in the outdoors than to run a lodge, a wilderness lodge.
Silver Salmon Creek Lodge offers full service, or like these gentlemen from Switzerland, you can rent a cabin and be on your own.
David gives people great latitude. He'll offer information to them and suggest that they, may not want to do certain activities, but David is a very flexible person and allows people to do the things that they want to do.
They're choosing this program because they are independent people that have traveled a long ways, but they're enjoying the simplicity of being able to take care of themselves and not needing the guide. And they're just going to fish the creek and take care of their own fish.
Including filleting your own fish. Smoke them if you got them. Salmon, that is. Dave's Smokehouse can do more than a few racks of salmon at a time. The bears seem to like smoked salmon too, and they make their own toothpicks at the same time, apparently. Dave takes Joanne down to the beach. This is a great, hardly touched area for ocean kayaking.
It's a very safe environment here. I certainly don't feel threatened here. Yet at the same time, it's not so over-controlled that you can't go out and do the things you want to do. I think there's other places in Alaska where you're not allowed to go for a walk in a certain area, or people feel such liability for you that you're just not allowed to do the things you'd like to do.
An occasional bear may come knocking on the door. In the evening, Arnie gives a slideshow.
I generally get here May the 13th, and we normally start having clients the 1st of June, somewhere around there. And we have a few bears, not a great large amount. You know, you work a little harder and find them, and as the year progresses on, the more bears start coming out, and they range around out here in these tidal flats, and they eat the sedge grass and the other grasses, and they actually gain weight on this grass. They're out there just like cattle grazing, and that's all they do all day long. And then the berries and things like that start coming in. Then they start eating the berries. And then when the salmon start coming in, that's when they really pack on the weight. But then they'll go down to the creek and they'll eat the salmon, and then they come back and they eat the grass and the berries. It's quite a cycle the way they go. I left here last year, October the 7th, and I was still seeing quite a few bears. We have a lot of photographers come here. There's some guests coming in today that were here 2 years ago, and it's 2 ladies. They'll be here to photograph bears, and that's why they're here.
A short boat ride up the coast from Silver Salmon Creek will take us to Tuxedni Bay.
This area being quite scenic, located in the management area of Lake Clark National Park.
On the way to the bay, we can see waterfalls, complements of the glacial melt in the Chignik Mountains.
Here we're at the mouth of Johnson River, Paul, and we're finding a little colony of harbor seals. And the colony is building. There's quite a few here now, up to a couple hundred, I believe. And they're mixed in with some kittiwakes right at the confluence of the Johnson River and Cook Inlet. That's better. Look at that. That's great right there. With the mountains behind you.
We have volcanic mountains behind us. 10,000-foot Mount Eliamna is only 15 miles behind us. And the Chigmit Mountains range all the way up to Denali, of course, so they're quite striking.
Here we have the entrance to Tuxedni Bay. We have Chiswick Island over here to our right, and that's managed by the National Maritime Wildlife Refuge. And you can see the cliff section there, the outcropping of rocks on the lower part to the right here, and that's a major kittiwake rookery. The black-legged kittiwakes use that for nesting. Their numbers are down from what they've been in recent years, and they're not sure exactly why, but we have several 100,000 nesting kittiwakes. And the only predator for the kittiwakes are the bald eagle and peregrine falcons. You'll see sometimes coming by the cliffs and trying to snatch their young. Otherwise, they have a perfect habitat here for rearing their little ones. Oh, that's a small blind that the federal biologists are using for studying the birds. A couple of caves coming up here, which are open on the back side. And there's even puffins that are nesting inside of them. Everybody likes puffins. They're a popular subject for photographers. And here we have mostly horned puffins, which have the white undersides, and a few tufted puffins, which are solid black bodied. And the puffins are pretty neat. They fly with their wings underwater. They can use their wings to fly underwater. They use their orange feet as rudders. The cormorants, you can always tell the cormorants because they have no natural oils in their feathers. So they hang their wings out to dry. And then a little bit to the left, you have the old Snug Harbor Cannery. First built back in 1917 and in operation until 1970 when it finally shut down due to high operation costs.
One of the first canneries established in Alaska. It's the old Chiswick Island Snug Harbor Cannery. And that was built in 1917, and during its peak of operation in the 1930s, they had as many as 75 people working there. And it's quite a historic monument. It hasn't been operating for 30 years. They just have a caretaker there kind of watching the place. And it has a lot of history to it, old retorts and boilers that they use for canning clams and canning salmon. And then this bay goes in about 16 miles, and you'll see in the far distance there to the left a point sticking out, and that we will be visiting a little bit here in a short while, and that's called Fossil Point, and it's a collection of old Jurassic fossils that are on the beaches right there in one of the outcroppings.
I believe 140 million years old. They're bivalve, and there's some ammonites there, and they're impressed into the rock, and it's just a very interesting area.
And then in the background you have the Chigmit Mountains with Lake Clark itself just beyond that far ridge there. You have 6,000-foot mountains there.
Down the coast a few miles from the lodge is Shelter Creek. Dave keeps a tent spot camp here, offering solitude and beauty. Here you can beachcomb or just relax. Food is a priority at the lodge.
We grill up salmon. On our offshore halibut trips, we'll bring in halibut, and people enjoy that as well. We have fresh clams that we dig, so we offer clam chowder and fried clams.
They grow their own produce in the garden.
We have a tidal vegetable out here called goose tongue, which is very popular, and it boils up kind of like a mustard or a collard green, and it's a little bit of Parmesan cheese and bacon, and makes it just a wonderful tidal vegetable. Nutrient-rich qualities to it, and the bears like it as well, so that tells you something.
Home-style cooking is the main fare at the lodge. Muffins, halibut dishes, everything is Alaska gourmet. At the end of the day, those that weren't careful dry out their boots. And then the campfire's lit. One full day at Silver Salmon Creek in Lake Clark National Park and Preserve is never long enough. And a week often seems too short. But at the end of the day, the bears, the salmon, the swans, and the people all take solace in having lived a full life, a complete life, in the heart of reality. As sure as the sun rises each morning and the clouds stir the elements, the marine life beneath the surface of our planet attempts to govern its own world. Alaska is a vast mountain wilderness, bordered on three sides by water containing more coastline than all the other states combined. A coastline furnishing habitat for thousands of marine species in these far northern waters. A coastline that is an environmental indicator of the waters of our planet. Seas and oceans cover nearly 3/4 of our planet, and half the life forms on Earth live beneath the surface of these waters. Yet, beneath the surface, we know but little about this liquid world. But certain birds, fish, and mammals are indicating that our marine environment is in danger worldwide. The oceans are shared with all the nations of the world. The world's problems are our problems. However, there is a way we can be alert to environmental dangers in our oceans. By looking in the world beneath the water, we can research solutions to these problems. Documented evidence shows that a number of species have shown changes in population. The number of stellar sea lions has dropped by 80% in the last 20 years. Usually only 25 gray whales die in a year. However, in 1999 and 2000, over 300 were found dead, and the reproduction rate is less than 300. Deaths are exceeding births. We still don't know why these populations are declining. Through research, we can now seek solutions to the recognized problems and try to further understand this complex underwater ecosystem of Prince William Sound, Resurrection Bay, and the Gulf of Alaska. On the shores of Resurrection Bay, a commitment to the understanding of these marine animals is in progress at the Alaska Sea Life Center. This project will assist the survival of the stellar sea lion, the sea otter, seabirds, and hundreds of other sea species, essential to our complex global ecosystem. The Alaska Sea Life Center in Seward, Alaska, is the first of its kind dedicated to research, education, and rehabilitation. At the head of Resurrection Bay, nestled between snow-covered mountains, this ice-free port in Seward gives scientists year-round access to the waters of Prince William Sound and the Gulf of Alaska. Resurrection Bay is one of Alaska's finest nature theaters, providing a perfect stage for stellar sea lions and many species of seabirds. The Alaska Sea Life Center occupies a 7-acre waterfront site in Seward, 2 hours by car south of Anchorage. The center is affiliated with the University of Alaska Fairbanks School of Fisheries and Ocean Sciences. The center has created a habitat for marine mammals that is designed specifically to emulate their home in the wild. Seabirds and mammals are taken in, and while rehabilitating, supply the scientists with patients to study. This is not a theme park or aquarium. The center actively engages the public by presenting educational programs concerning the research from rehabilitation at the center. In May 1998, the cutting of the ribbon started the project with much fanfare.
Cut the ribbon.
After the celebration, the center is given back to the environment and the education it offers. But the Alaska Sea Life Center is more than research. Its doors are open to share the project with the public. Let's follow these young explorers on a journey through the Sea Life Center. All the animals contributing to the research do not come from Resurrection Bay. They come from many distant northern locations, as do the scientists.
Because of where it is and what we're doing is attracting people from all over the world, literally, to come here and do research that can't be done at any other institution. The mission of the Alaska Sea Life Center is 3 parts. It is public education, research, and rehabilitation of marine wildlife so that we can be part of the solution to our environmental dilemmas.
The sea mammal housing inside the center offers underwater viewing and a natural habitat for such residents as Woody the sea lion.
This institution differs from most institutions in that it was built on the cutting edge of where zoologic, aquarium, and animal holding facilities are going. In other words, historically, animal holding facilities have simply been menageries for the largest, the biggest, the most unusual, people to come and just be entertained. It's research on display. We have the research areas such as the Salmon Research Lab, the outdoor lab for pinnipeds, including sea lions and seals, as well as pelagic and marine birds, are all where the public can actually watch and see what's going on with those animals. Many areas where they can't see directly, we have remote cameras, such as in the breeding areas for the puffins and for the common murres and pigeon guillemots. And many of those species, we actually have cameras so you can eavesdrop, if you like, on what's going on behind the scenes, even though a direct window may not be there because it would disturb the animals.
This young man is looking at a sea lion rookery on Chiswell Island in Alaska Maritime National Wildlife Refuge, 35 miles south of the Sea Life Center, through a remote-controlled camera. You can move the camera from where you stand to enjoy different perspectives. In the days of yore, the bark of the sea lion used to warn sailors of approaching reefs. Their decreasing numbers today are warning us of environmental threats.
We have a number of species which are primarily there for education. We do have a touch tank that allows kids and adults to actually check out a starfish, to really look at a sea cucumber, to really look at some of the invertebrates and things like that that they may see along the shore, and to educate them about which ones are venomous and not, which ones may look terrible but actually are not a problem at all, and how they fit in the ecosystem. We also have a number of fish which simply are there to let people know, well, if you're buying pollock, often, especially in the United States, we get our fish on styrofoam with saran wrap over it. So it's good for people actually to see the live fish and see, well, this is what a pollock looks like. This is what a lingcod looks like. This is what a rockfish looks like. So you can actually see it before you get to the grocery store and have more appreciation of the animal itself.
From kids to elders, it is a learning experience.
It allows the public to come in and see research on display and science on display and let everybody see the type of science that's going on that's important for the North Pacific.
You're doing research that directly benefits that species. Stellar sea lions are a good example. They have dropped by 80% in the last 20 years in their wild populations. We really don't know why they have dropped so dramatically. We don't know if it's man-made causes or if it's purely environmental causes such as El Nino, changing the fish population and so forth. But we can do things with captive animals that cannot be done in the wild, such as taking serial blood samples from a species and finding out how it changes. We will do nutritional studies where we actually feed sea lions one specific type of food item and wait and take samples from it to find out how that affected their immune system. The real key to that is finding out why are these animals sick or why are these animals in need of rehabilitation. And not so much because we just want to spend thousands of dollars saving one little baby seal, because that's not necessarily the best use of resources if that's the only reason. Not just because they're cute. We really need to find out why they have the problems they have so we can then inform policymakers to make informed decisions on exactly what to do to enhance our wildlife here in Alaska. Even the exhibits are actually holding research animals. So although they may be very aesthetically pleasing because they're naturalistic, they're actually research animals are being held there and it's good for them. We're doing a number of different studies which are really focused specifically on the ecosystem of the North Pacific, the Alaskan Gulf, Bering Sea, to look at nutritional stress to see if the change in the fish population has had a significant effect.
The Sea Life Center is a complex of exhibits, displays, tanks, pools, and wet and dry laboratories. You can come as an individual, a party, or a group, such as a school field trip. Downstairs is the research area and the creature kitchen. Employees and volunteers provide food and hygiene for the animals.
Travis! Cecil! 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 Good boy! Good job, Travis! Nice job. Come on.
name is Dennis Kristen. I'm the curator of mammals here at the Alaska Sea Life Center, and I'm responsible for essentially the marine mammal collection here and facilitating the research and husbandry programs. The purpose of husbandry is essentially just animal care, maintaining our collection of marine mammals here in the best possible health. So, practicing some of the behaviors in his repertoire. We feed them from anywhere from 1 to 4 or 5 times a day. This is a 4-year-old male. His name is Travis, and Nicole is just doing some toothbrushing, some preventative dental care. She's using a paste applied to a toothbrush, and the animals are trained to station right in front of a trainer and do specific behaviors that will present different parts of their body. With respect to brushing his teeth, he's trained to station his snout to her hand and then open his mouth on command and keep his mouth open while Nicole brushes his teeth. And we spend a lot of time desensitizing the animals to that kind of manipulation so that we're able to touch them all over their body. Some of the animals are trained to station while we give them medication applications or even IM injections or blood samples. Some of the animals are trained to allow for blood sampling. So here Nicole is asking Travis to target on the little buoy, which just gives him a focal point to pay attention to while she touches his body. You can see he's a little sensitive on the hind flipper area. So Nicole's just going to spend more time in that area and reinforcing him for remaining calm. And eventually he'll get used to his flippers being touched and harbor seals are a little bit awkward on land. They're well adapted to and well suited to swimming in the water. You notice when they come on land, they're kind of humber along, kind of like a caterpillar, I guess. They don't really have the limbs to support their body weight, so they hop along on their ventrals.
Good job, guys! In the water? Good job. Coming through the gate right now is Woody. He's our male stellar sea lion. He's going to be hard to talk over. He can be loud sometimes, but Woody weighs about 350 kilograms. So he's pretty big, but not as big as he will get. 350 times 2.2, so that's just about 700 pounds, a little bit more than 700 pounds. This is a way for us to pretend that it's an X-ray plate without actually using one. And it pretty much, you can see Woody's keeping an eye on Dennis with one eye as he's kind of moving that plate around a little bit down there. And then Dennis is going to ease him on down so that he lays real still, so that if there was an X-ray machine, we could go ahead and hold him there while the vet department took an X-ray of whatever part of his body that they wanted to see. You can see what big teeth he has. Dennis is going to brush his teeth now. And Woody holds really well. His whiskers, he'll use those to feel around. In the water, they can search out a fish with it. You can see that he'll sometimes pull them out like that. They're real expressive. They're pretty thick. And they're very sensitive. You can see how his upper lip is moving with Dennis touching him. It's another way that they can feel their surroundings around them. In dark, murky water, they'd be able to feel where they were going a little bit better. A little bit louder than the harbor seal. How much larger his front flippers are than the harbor seals as well. If you notice the way that he moves on land compared to the harbor seal, he can actually sit up and use those front flippers to move around. You can see kind of the size difference between the peacod, which is on the left, and the pollock, which is on the right. And Woody actually is eating pollock. That was just a pollock he ate. He knows a lot of behaviors just by listening to the words. He doesn't, I don't want to say he understands English, but he's heard those words repetitively, and they've been reinforced so many times that he starts to, associate going to the scale with the word scale and a simple point. He's good at retrieving things.
Good boy. Woody is not the only sea lion in research school.
Sugars with Dennis. We've actually trained these guys to exhale and inhale on command or signal, so that if we ever have to do anesthesia, we can actually tell them to breathe, and they can breathe in the anesthesia gas that we use, so they can do that. That's what he was doing, asking her to exhale right there. And there she goes. You can see how easy it is for her to swallow peacock. And actually, that peacock he fed her isn't even a very large peacock compared to some of the other ones that we do feed. They're trained to wait while we move around, although sometimes they do get impatient and try to sneak while we're not looking.
Well, not even full grown, you can see the sea lions are taller than most of us. That small orange device on the back of the animals is a time depth recorder.
They each have one of these. You probably noticed it on Woody as well. They've been kind of temporarily attached to their fur on the top of their backs for just a few more weeks. They're involved with an optimal foraging experiment, and to that base plate we attach a TDR, or a time depth recorder, and while they're taking part in this experiment, it will record things like the depth that they dive to, the amount of time, and some other data.
Radio telemetry and satellite telemetry. We're researching different types of apparatus that may be attached to the animal, so we can follow them and see exactly where they migrate to and how long they stay underwater, and those types of things, time depth recorders.
Let's take a trip to the outdoor research lab to see the seagulls in rehabilitation. Before any animal is released, they show that they can catch and eat live fish in their pool.
These animals, we do not want to keep them. We want to keep them wild as much as possible and release them as quickly as possible. We're doing a number of different studies which are really focused specifically on the ecosystem of the North Pacific, the Alaskan Gulf, Bering Sea, to look at nutritional stress to see if the change in the fish population has had a significant effect.
When these animals are here, we get a great deal of scientific information about the animals. So they're not really research animals per se. They are here to be rehabilitated, but in the process of rehabilitating them, we take blood samples, we take tissue samples, we gather a great deal of scientific information about them that can be shared with the whole scientific community that's studying these animals.
Back up topside, we follow our young explorers to the outdoor rookery and observation platform.
Whoa! Whoa! Look!
Amy Haddo. I'm the Education Director at the Alaska Sea Life Center, and so I manage the volunteer and intern staff and the school program and elder hostel staff and the exhibits department. So the three different types of birds are the common murres, and you'll see some up there with their chicks. They're black-backed and white-bellied, kind of a long, thin bill. There's another common murre. The pigeon guillemots, which are all black with white wing bars, and the tufted puffins with the big chunky bills and the nice blonde hair. Now they'll molt that off when it gets close to winter time. They'll lose all the white feathers and those tufts, and they'll just be black all over, except for their orange bill and their feet. And then they go out to sea in the winter like that. Maybe that helps them blend in with the ocean surface more. Puffins lay eggs too. In fact, all birds lay eggs, and the puffins, we had 3 different puffin pairs that laid eggs this year, and actually 4 different puffin pairs that laid eggs. And they nest in the little burrows. You'll see some little holes in the rocks. In fact, right behind where those puffins are now, there's that greenish piece of wood, and there's one puffin burrow back there. These species are diving seabirds in the alcid family, and they only come to rocky areas like this in the spring and summer to find their mates and nest. The rest of the year, they're out at sea. See how it's carrying the fish? It's carrying that fish lengthwise in its bill. So that one ate the fish. If they're going to bring it back to their chick, they don't eat the fish. They would bring it back that way.
The seabirds, when in the mood, can be quite entertaining. Next, we are going to the animal ER display. This is a popular place for kids. Here we can learn in depth about how rehabilitation works. ER is the study of Iggy, an orphan seal.
Animal ER is a good name for what we do in rehab because we're not trying to take animals in and take care of them for a long time. They help us by letting us learn what's going on with the wild population.
Iggy was one of our sort of typical and classic harbor seal cases of a pup that was abandoned by the mother. For what reason, we're not sure, but it was clearly a case where the mother was not going to come back and care for this animal. And we brought it in, and it was really suffering from nothing worse than just some malnourishment and underweight. And so we nursed it back to health. We were able to release the animal successfully into the wild.
This display reenacts the story of Iggy's rehabilitation.
This first station, there's a recreation of a phone call, an actual phone call that we got last year.
Yeah, hello. I'm calling from Iquique because I watched this seal pup on the beach all day yesterday, and there were no other seals around. I was afraid the dogs might get it, so I put it in my bathtub with a little water overnight and didn't put him out again this morning. I was thinking his mother might come back, but there's still no sign of any seals. I mean, what should I do? Can you help the seal pup there?
She did the right thing. She watched it for more than 24 hours, but then she was worried that some of the village dogs would get it.
Iggy was transported to the center in an airline pet kennel.
This kind of thing is something you would use for a seabird, especially. It's called a bird trampoline. But we put those in the bottom of a kennel because seabirds can't really sit on their breastbone or keel. That can give them sores. So, and also, if they're sitting in their own waste, you know, like if they go to the bathroom in there, it's not good for them to sit in it. So when we put these inside the kennel.
These gloves protect us and keep the animals germ-free.
A lot of these animals are a little bit scared, and they might want to bite us just because they're trying to protect themselves. They don't know we're there to help.
Dolphin stretchers with holes for the flippers are used to move the animals safely.
So this is kind of a special piece of equipment that we would use, and we really do have one of these downstairs.
Just like a hospital, X-rays are used to diagnose the animals.
We can kind of look and see if we can tell what might have been wrong with this animal, and then we can look and say, oh, it's a gull. So this was a gull, and it has a broken clavicle or collarbone, which is this part right here. And so if you look, here's where that is, and you may be able to pick up where it's broken. It's a sea otter with a broken backbone, and this one was actually successfully treated and released. And this was one from during the oil spill time.
Small doors reveal information of interest to the curious.
When the baby harbor seals are really young, they would still be drinking their mother's milk for about 4 to 6 weeks. Feeding lets us deliver a lot of nutrition quickly and measure exactly how much, and it also keeps the animal from getting too imprinted on people. You don't want to necessarily cuddle a rehab animal and bottle feed it if it's one like a harbor seal that doesn't spend a long time with its mom, because that gets it too used to being handled by humans. What we do here is set it up so you can see if you're getting it up toward the esophagus, which goes to the stomach, or down into the trachea, which you wouldn't want. Often animals come in and they're not even alive. We can learn what happened to a certain animal, even if it's not alive when it gets here. And if we can get its pelt and have it tanned so that people can touch them, then that's another value of the animal. But this is the sea otter pelt. This is one good way to feel the difference, and you can see that it's not nearly as thick for the harbor seal. It's kind of stiff hair. Yeah, they're relying on blubber for their warmth, whereas the sea otter has no blubber. It is relying on this fur, and it's some of the densest fur. I think it's the densest fur in the animal kingdom, up to 1 million hairs per square inch in the sea otter fur. So this is one way we can have pelts available for people to touch. Sea otters demand a lot of hands-on care. You do use a baby bottle to feed them. They have to be groomed almost constantly.
The little ones get the full service of a comb, a brush, and a dryer. Our brushing a small animal is a small gesture. As our animal neighbors of the sea share their knowledge of their world, they make a grand gesture. Our worlds are one. The Alaska Sea Life Center is a modern rehabilitation center for animals, scientists, students, and the public. It is the direction where aquariums and animal holding facilities are going. This is the future. Through research and education centers like the Alaska Sea Life Center,
we can rehabilitate not only sea animals, but perhaps our own practices in relationship to our environment. Perhaps this is more than rehabilitation. Perhaps this is a guide to the future to take us out of troubled waters.